Game developers, what is something gamers on the internet always claim to be easy to do or fix, when in reality it's a real pain in the ass? From experience, those bugs that we have no idea how to reproduce are the worst. People can only give vague descriptions like it just stopped like that, and then you spend hours unsuccessfully trying to have the same issue. It doesn't work, goddamn. There is a reason me writing bug reports has picked up since I did support. I realized people are plain unable to write bug reports. Edit, after having it written out like a dozen times, sometimes a feature does not work. However, things only have one way to work right, but dozens to thousands of ways to not work, so stating in which way it did not work is important. Key elements of a helpful bug report are: what were you doing? Be precise, how did you get there? What exactly did you click interact with? What did you expect to happen? What did happen? Once more, try to use precise words, avoid general words like work. Ideally include environment information, system information, information about your progress character, logs, internet information. It's a true miracle that Subnautica didn't get PEBCAC with their bug reporting system. The fact that it's in-game is pretty nice. Probably allows them to get a ton of diagnostic reports due to it being built in. With Metro Exodus, Deep Silver support had me run CMDiag, that I believe is an in-house tool to scan your entire PC and prepare a nice zip file to send them in a ticket reply. I took a look before sending, and it's mostly hardware and driver info along with a ton of Metro Exodus specific diagnostic and log data I didn't know existed behind the scenes. Helped with my video driver issues when the game first came out. Meanwhile, Activision support for Warzone is like just Google the issue, good luck. Can you imagine if they put in extra effort? They could probably send you a "let me Google that for you" link. Shame all that effort goes to waste. Convincing managers something is worth the effort. Those who don't actually make games or know how they're made somehow make all the big decisions. The craft of game design is mostly invisible, despite what all those game design review YouTubers would tell you. Putting a game together is a million microscopic little things that nobody would ever realize. For example, yesterday I added a HUD display for the user's coin count. However, the game has a multiplier feature so that each coin you collect might actually be worth 2 coins, or 5 coins, or 100, or 43,584 coins. I wanted a nice little thing where instead of the HUD tally changing instantly, it would rapidly count up, so if you got 5 coins you'd see the counter go brr and add all the numbers on one after the other. Smile, except the speed that makes this look nice for 5 coins doesn't work when you just got 463,337 coins. I tested it and I had to wait over a minute for the HUD counter to catch up to the correct coin tally, totally unusable. So it has to change the speed that it does the little count up animation based on how many coins you just got. So I wrote some code that dynamically increases the speed of the count up proportionally with larger numbers. That's just for a damn coin counter that nobody will ever look at twice. No game design YouTuber is going to point that out. No gamer will ever notice. But you'd notice if it was wrong. That's game development. Hackers, desync, physics. Network play in video games is a ducking marvel. People have no idea how complex it really is managing state between client and server, broadcasting updates between clients, keeping the game synchronized, dealing with latency and lost packets, etc. The more I study computer science, the more I don't understand how anything even works, tbh. The industry is massive. Abstractions are everywhere. Decades of engineering went into me being able to get this message to you, and hardly a single person on the planet could tell you every detail of it. The network guy can't tell you about the device driver. The app developer doesn't know the network. The person who wrote the OS doesn't know anything about the CDN or the firewall sitting somewhere on the network route. The person who designed the Reddit DB couldn't explain the TCP protocol that the HTTPS calls are using and how they're ensuring the traffic makes it to you. Best advice I can give you: all code is bad. All programmers are bad. Nobody know everything. Most hardly know anything beyond a small sliver of their domain in the grand scheme of things. The sooner you accept that you truly know nothing and will know hardly anything even after a life dedicated to programming, the better off you'll be. Strong programming fundamentals, an ability to learn quickly, and an ability to explain technical things to non-technical people will do wonders for your career if you pursue software engineering as a profession. I'm a software engineer and I approve this message. I am not a software engineer and I also approve this message. Applies to all domains of knowledge. Optimizing, I use the quotation marks because I feel like most people don't really understand what optimizing is. It's the process where the lorry transforms into the robot. Rollout. Server maintenance, and the unforeseen delays on getting the servers back up on time. Along with any number of reasons this gets delayed, specifically replies to people saying shouldn't they have tested for this stuff !1?1. That sentence was thrown around a lot during the New World beta. That's the point of the beta, to test the back-end servers to make sure they work well. No, people want a working game even in a beta phase. Alpha is the new beta phase. You can blame early access games for that. Hey, remember demos? Like real demos you could have for free to make up your mind if the 60 decimeters, Deutsche Mark, are really worth the game? I do. And I hate the switch to pay more to beta test. You literally play to essentially do the job of quality assurance or whatever the name in English is. Adding multiplayer to a single-player game. Making a multiplayer game is okay, but adding multiplayer usually involves rewriting a lot of code. I remember playing Don't Starve when it first came out and thinking I wish this was multiplayer, but I know it's a ton of work, they'll never do it. Then a few months later they announced that due to popular demand, they had rewritten the entire game in a different programming language that was better suited to multiplayer, and then released it as Don't Starve Together. The devs had just decided that it was easier to redo the entire thing from the ground up than it was to try to add on multiplayer functionality to a game original intended to be single player. The devs had just decided that it was easier to redo the entire thing from the ground up than it was to try to add on multiplayer functionality to a game original intended to be single player. It almost always is. I know that's the point of this thread, but it really can't be harped on enough. Going from singleplayer to multiplayer is a huge rewrite. There comes a point where rewriting X% of the game is harder than rewriting the whole thing. It's like being told to change something on a painting. Adding some skin blemishes to a face or adding a tower to a castle can be done without starting over, but when they ask you to change the entire castle you might as well start over. Most games that you see being single-player and then have multiplayer added later, for example pre-releases that aren't multiplayer yet, are still designed with multiplayer in mind from the start. Not always, but most. This is very true of basically all programming. Sometimes, if you're either very clever or very lucky, you can design and write things that are easy to modify down the road. But more often than not, what happens is you get a request that has X features it needs, so you do that. And then after that's all done and designed around those features, the user comes back and says actually, I also need Y and Z features, so you have to try to work those in too. As that keeps happening, you can end up with a mess of mashed together things that you strung together to get to work. It happened with my first solo project at work. Worked with someone and it was decided this web app needed to do 3 things. After those 3 things were done, they came back and were like, oh, we also have to do this and this and this. Can you put that in? So it got messy. I think it made it to 20 or so things from 3 and is on my to completely redo list now. And in the end, I just feel sorry for the users who are currently using that buggy thing because I literally didn't know how to do better at the time. Physics. Edit. I'll take advantage of the reach of this post to share that I do not speak of what I do not know, for I myself have written the physics on my game, several rewrites, actually, you can check the physics, and more, on this playlist if you wish. Smile. Pretty much everything you can imagine, as even if the change itself is simple, it's constrained by dependent systems and content. If I change jump height, any levels that have already been made with the old height in mind may have to be remade. If I change how crafting works, the inventory system may need a revision. If I add a cover mechanic, all levels must now be updated with cover objects and I needs to be updated to know what cover and cover objects means. If I add a third-person camera perspective to an FPS, each action that is animated in first person has to be reviewed for how it works in third person. Also, the levels have to be updated because the camera can now exist outside of the player character. If I change the speed at which the player character moves, level streaming may need an adjustment, and if the bottleneck is hardware speed I may need to compromise on audiovisual fidelity instead. If my game uses FMV cutscenes, content design might be forced by what happens in those cutscenes, if it's not in the budget to render them again as the design changes. Games are houses of cards more often than not. If I change the speed at which the player character moves, level streaming may need an adjustment, and if the bottleneck is hardware speed I may need to compromise on audiovisual fidelity instead. One of my favorite stories regarding this is during play testing on the original Borderlands and players requested the character ran quicker. What they ended up doing was adding more detail to the ground like rocks and scrubs of grass. These things whizzing past while running gave the illusion of higher speed, and when given back to the play testers they said it was a lot better. Edit, chill with the awards guys, I'm just repeating something I read in an article. Many thanks. Yup. Fix the perceived problem, don't necessarily accept people's analysis of why that problem is there. Smile. As Mark Rosewater often says, players are great to identify problems, not so great coming up with solutions. Heard a good quote on this, which was, if the client says it's wrong, it probably is. However, the fix they propose is probably wrong, so we as developers have to distill the feedback and find the right solution.